Do you like being punched in the face repeatedly by a bog monster who is sweaty and also on fire? Did I mention you're bound by seaweed? If that sounds like a kink you'd be into, have I got a whiskey for you. Welcome back to Oak and Age. My name is Alan, and today we're reviewing Port Askaig 100 Proof. Now, Port Askaig 100 Proof is a Scotch whiskey. It's a single malt. There is a place called Port Askaig, and it is on Islay, best known as being a very heavily peated Scotch production region. That's where famous brands like Laphroaig and Lagavulin and Ardbeg come from. And on the north of Islay, there is a port called Askaig, and it's very close to two other well-known distilleries, Kalila and Bunnahabhain. So it plays a really important role, the port that is, in commerce and the economy of Islay. I've been there, and there's like a hotel, a gas station, a store, and like a ferry terminal. It's pretty small. So if you were driving through it and you happen to sneeze, you'd miss it. Don't worry about the size. The port itself plays a really integral role in Scotch because that's a key entry and exit point. That's basically what they named this after. And guess what? This doesn't have its own distillery. This is actually a product from a company called Elixir. They're like an independent bottler and independent distributor. So there is no such thing as Port Askaig as a distillery. Now, right off the bat, I need to tell you, the bottle is lying to you. It says 100 proof, but that is not in fact true, because if it was 100 proof, then this bottle would have 50% ABV, alcohol by volume, but legally, all bottles of whiskey need to have the alcohol content clearly labeled, and this one is actually coming in at 57.1%, which gives us a proof of 114.2. I mean, I guess 100 proof just rolls better off the tongue. Speaking of tongues, let's dive right in. As I mentioned, this is an Islay single malt Scotch, so it's going to be very peaty, heavily peated, and because the proof is so high, you're gonna really taste it. Here's the thing with proof and whiskey. Think of it almost like a volume knob on your car's stereo system. The higher you crank that knob, the more you're gonna hear the music, the louder it's gonna get, right? There is a point where you're gonna reach diminishing returns, because if the volume is too high, you start to kind of lose certain frequencies and it might sound muddled or cloudy or just straight up too loud and unpleasant, so you might have to dial it back. So that is one thing that you may want to be concerned about with a bottle like this, because again, the proof is so high, 57.1%. I digress. Let's get into the actual tasting of it. Now, there is no age statement on this whiskey, which implies it's pretty young, and if you look at it, it's a very light color. So not a lot in the way of oakiness and oak tannins, I'm guessing, from this one. Just not a lot of color to it. It's like diluted honey. A young whiskey, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. That just means, you know, it's not gonna have a lot of those flavor profiles you'd expect from an older whiskey that's spent more time aging in a barrel. So on the nose, man, that is good. You just get this real, it's like you can really tell it's an Islay just by the smell. I mean, obviously there's a lot of smoke coming off of it, but it's like Islay smoke. You can tell this is Islay smoke. There's a lot of iodine and brine to it. This is a very maritime-y smelling whiskey. All right, I'm gonna go in and have a taste here. Woo! Yep. Yeah. So right off the bat, I can tell you there's a lot of heat coming from this. Again, it's a very high proof whiskey, so a lot of alcohol in there. You're gonna feel it on your palate right away. There's a little bit of that alcohol burn, which may appeal to you. It may not appeal to you. It's completely, it comes down to what you're into as a flavor profile and as a whiskey drinking experience. I'm getting hints of brininess again. Yeah, there's like a sweetness to it. Almost like a lemon zest. It's very herbaceous. There's a lot of herbal notes to it. Maybe just a little bit of salted caramel, but again, younger whiskey, I'm not getting a lot of those oak tannins because it hasn't spent a lot of time aging. Yeah, this is like the kind of whiskey that someone who dresses like this might enjoy. This might be the kind of whiskey that someone who does this in their spare time might enjoy. This might be the kind of whiskey that people who listen to bands like this might enjoy. And that's because this is on the extreme end of the flavor profile. Out of my entire collection, this is probably the most extreme whiskey I have in terms of just taking you on a journey, on a ride, a wild ride. And that may not be for everyone. However, there is no shame in watering it down. And in fact, just like, again, my analogy with the volume knob on your car stereo, you can turn that volume down until you hit a comfort level that you're happy with, where it sounds good to you. And the same goes for whiskey, especially a higher strength whiskey. You can definitely just put a little bit of water in there and temper it. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. All right, so as ever the classy gentleman, I'm just gonna go with the tried and true method of pouring a little bit of water into the lid of a water bottle, because I just want to drop, I don't want to drown this thing. Just, there we go. And I mean, if I had to guess, I've probably diluted it from 57.1% down to maybe like a more reasonable 52%. I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but let's see what a little bit of water actually does. Yeah, so right away, I'm getting more off the nose than I was otherwise. Like the alcohol vapors were just too strong before. So all I was really getting was the bolder smells that you would get from this. Obviously the creosote smoke profile from the peat. There's like a honey note to it, in addition to still the smoke. You're never gonna get rid of that smoky profile. Yeah, so there's a little bit less alcohol burn than before. And now I'm getting a little bit more on the finish. On the finish, I'm getting more of that toffee. There's a little bit of bitter note that lingers, and it not in an unpleasant way. Just like a butterscotch or a toffee. I like it straight from the bottle into my glass, but a drop or two of water definitely doesn't hurt things, and it kind of changes the profile just enough that you might be able to pick up on some of the nuances you missed before. Overall, not bad. And the other benefit to having a higher proof whiskey is that it really holds its own in cocktails. If you've ever tried a smoky Coke, that is a Coca-Cola with a smoky peated whiskey in it, this would be the stuff I would recommend using because it's a higher proof. It's also a really good value. We'll get into that in a minute with the scorecard here, but I gotta say, I paid like $65 Canadian for this thing. I've never seen it above 70. For an Islay, and especially a cask strength Islay, that's great value. And that's why I would always use this in a cocktail if I'm ever trying to make a peated Scotch cocktail. All right, it's now time to put the Port Askaig 100 proof to the test. We're gonna pin it against our completely subjective must-have scorecard. Now remember, a higher score on this scorecard doesn't necessarily mean the whiskey is, better or it's my favorite. It just means that I think it's a well-rounded whiskey that would be at home on anybody's, whiskey counter, in their collection, in their home bar, whatever the case may be. Each parameter is out of 5. So, would I recommend this? I'm gonna give this a 3.5 out of 5. It's really good stuff. but it's also really on the extreme side of the flavor profile. It might punch you in the face. Would I buy it again? 5 out of 5, 100% I would buy it again. I already own a couple of bottles, and anytime I see it on sale, I'm going to pick it up. And lastly, bang for the buck, 4.5 out of 5. I paid like $65 Canadian for this, and for a peated Scotch that is cask strength, that's pretty much unheard of, especially considering how good it actually is. The only reason it's not a 5 out of 5 is because some people may still have a hard time dishing out more than 60 bucks for a bottle of whiskey. And that's totally fair. Like I said, completely subjective. But all in, that brings us to 13 out of 15, which makes it a pretty good Scotch to have in your collection, particularly if you are inclined to those more peaty Islay flavors that I really enjoy myself. So Port Askaig 100 proof, a young single malt Scotch whiskey. The volume is cranked up to 11. Yeah, it'll knock your socks off. I don't know what else to say about it, so that's about it. Thanks once again for tuning into Oak and Age. If you liked what you saw here, maybe smash that like button, hit the subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment. I would love to know how we're doing here. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think of my reviews, or if you have this bottle, I want to know what you think of it. You know, feel free to get in touch. I'm also on Instagram at Oak and Age. So slide into those DMs, and you know, until next time, don't drink and drive. So awkward.